Pirates number 6. Phagocyte, written by Alfredo Francisco Humberto Juillet Frascara. From February 4 to March 4, 2023. Pirates 1, Lundy Bianco. Pirates 2, Linda Duarte. Pirates 3, Pinocchian. Pirates 4, Latham. Pirates 5, Captain Corbugs. Pirates 6, Phagocyte. Pirates 7, Laurencio. Pirates 8, Victor Sibisky. Pirates 9, Vincent Sepri. Pirates 10, Count Lacutia. Pirates 11, Victamo. Time, year, 2283 CE. Places, Earth of Sun Planet Gemini B3. Characters, Organization Chart of the Filicosmico Club. President, Augusto Flores. Secretary Alfredo Benigno. Treasurer Alfredo Varin. Director 1, Fagocito Gutierrez. Director 2, Franz Camerobius. Director 3, Kurt Wheel. Wise Archaeologist, Leonidas Cienfuegos. Archaeologist, Martin de la Pierre. Electronics Genius, Phase Shift Technician, Borg Baroness. Borg's Assistants, Kurlifan, Morbnus, Jonas. 12 Farmers from the Municipal Data, Julio, German, Luis, Ricardo, Victor, Aloga, Cornels, Gamito, Gutierrez, Celis. Astronomer, Ernesto Farias. Natives of GP3, Huberto, Trope, Raquela. Restaurant Waitress, Lorenza. Sea Voyage Skipper, Rinal Farfik. Boat Captain, Baturus Lager. Divers, Discipline, Material. Ship's Cook, Guzer Duller. In Farfik Mansion, Waiter, Nivaldo, Cook, Francisca. Assistant, Veronica Perez. Dated. Day in Gemini. Beta 3 lasts 32 hours. Native cities, Vasilka, Serdid, Lamide, Lossestein, Tor. Colony cities of Earth, New Russia, Woodsworth. Chapter 1. I already discussed this with the President. We have his permission but not his money, said Fagocito Gutierrez. Does he not have any cash? Asked Franz Camerobius. I think not much. Maybe we should all go. That way there is more pressure. Kurt Wheel said. Agreed, then. Next meeting, I recommend wearing a tie. Expressed Fagocito. Yes, it is being used again, although it is ridiculous, wearing long robes. Kurt Wheel smiled. Fashion doesn't bother you. It was worse to be stuffed into tubes of clothing. His pants fell off, he suffocated in the heat, anyway. I prefer tunics, women always wore them, just sometimes cut too short. Said Fagocito Gutierrez. Well, let's talk about Don Varinus' ship. I think they have been repaired. Kurt Wheel asked. He went to see him yesterday. He said that he needed 30,000 credits and he would have her ready with just that. That is also the price of our trip. Said Fagocito Gutierrez. It is a reasonable sum. We have 80,000 credits but we have to spend them before leaving. Our astrophysicist and astronomer Gustavo Frickel has given us the exact coordinates in Iraq. Don Varius's invention will take us there in no time. You have to have money for the excavations and process permits with the Iraqi authorities, said Franz Camerobius. 2. At the next meeting of the Filicosmico Club, the 3 directors named above spoke with its president, Don Augusto Flores. He listened to them attentively in the foyer of the Filicosmic Club, and he responded, shaking his head, I have nothing else to tell you. There is no money. But nothing is lost by asking the partners for cooperation. In this same meeting, Mr. President, Fagocito Gutierrez questioned, with pathetic eyes. If you want. I don't promise anything, said President Augusto Flores, turning his pointy nose a little. A bell rang and that indicated that the meeting was beginning. The directors advanced and sat down at a long table, which faced 4 lines of comfortable seats, where 62 people now sat. They were the members of the club. The president took the microphone and said, let's start this session by reading the previous minutes. Mr. Secretaries, please begin. Secretary Alfredo Benigno turned red, took the minute book with both hands and read with grandiloquent inflections what was said and resolved at the previous meeting. In summary, There would be a visit to Cerro Colorado, in search of minerals, a dinner of camaraderie at a restaurant on Avenida Brazil, and then the detail. No minerals were found on that hill, but some very hard blue stones. The camaraderie dinner was held with 8 people, and the reading ended by commenting that according to a rock expert, the blue stones were diorite. 3. The second to speak through the microphone was Mr. Alfredo Barron, explaining that the lease of the property had been cancelled, 35,000 pesos, and 12,000 pesos had been left in the cash, and he reminded the partners to get in touch. Pay in the monthly installments, since within 15 days you had to pay 40,000 pesos for electricity costs and 25,000 pesos for drinking water. President Augusto Flores presented the motion of the directors, saying, with the desire to discover the origins of human civilization, Mr. Gutierrez, Mr. Covarrubias and Mr. West will make a trip to Iraq, where they will explore and carry out excavations. As members of the club, I will let them tell themselves what their efforts are about. 4. Pagacito Gutierrez took the microphone and looked at the 62 members, who immediately showed no signs of intelligent life. They just looked impassive. Perhaps the secretary's reading and the treasurer's dark account had left them immersed in their own affairs. Dear partners, you already know our project, because we have been talking about this for more than 2 years. Pagacito said, and some partners came out of their silence and laughed with a cavernous voice. Points. That's right, a lot of time and saliva wasted. But we are already one step away from taking the trip forward. We only need your cooperation, a small monetary help that each of you gives, and we will be very grateful," said Wheel. He put on a piggy bank, and Franz Covarrubias said, "I know that you know that there was an ancient civilization of giants 4 meters high. Large ships sailed the seas, carving rocks with advanced methods that may have been mechanical using draft animals, but there was a flood that buried everything under tons of mud and stones, covering cities and drowning people. The remnant was unable to recover their civilization, and you may ask why? It was because few were saved, and they were attacked by pests that brought mud and rotting of animals and vegetation. The enmity of the small humans also cooperated, which is the current humanity, which seized the opportunity to eliminate the previously feared giants world leaders. There is also the idea that this race of giants created, modifying, current humanity, which some followers of Zechariah Sitchin believe were people from another planet. I believe that the giants modified human beings, making them small to work in the gold mines in South Africa and other parts of the planet Earth, since perhaps the giants had great difficulty entering the tunnels and underground galleries. And we believe that by exploring, we will also find the ancestors of those giants, those reptiles with the ability to reason that may have reigned over the earth before giant humanity, and have done so for millions of years." Director Wheel took the microphone and said, "We will go to the cradle of civilization, to Iraq, because there is still much to discover there." The members applauded the talk, and some deposited their monetary aid with restraint. 6. "Let's count that money, before you take it," the president asked. "So that? Are they going to ask us to account later? You should know, Mr. Augusto Flores, that the amount we find in this box is much better than what we have for the trip." And as Pagacito Gutierrez was furious, the president moved his arms like blades and replied, "That is not my intention, Mr. Director. It's just to note it in the minutes of this session." And as Flores apologized. That being so, the money was counted, and there were 1,203 credits. The directors thanked the president and the partners who were still in the room. The next day the directors visited Borg Verena at his home. He half opened the gate, looking at both sides of the street, and saying, "Come in quickly. There is someone knocking on the door. I don't know if he is a municipal inspector or a judicial receiver. He can also be a mugger. I have no desire to know, I just avoid them. All miscreants." Borg was of average height, with a paunch covered in pastel gray overalls. 7. "We brought the money. You will say, when the game is," commented Pagacito Gutierrez. The scientist took the money, counted it and said, "It has to be between tomorrow and 15 days from there. Then I have to travel, but in the usual way. And that's Sabio Varinus. I think in about 5 more days. We must bring the equipment and the group that will travel. You told us up to 10 people, right?" Fagocito asked. "Correct. No more than 10. There are 3 of you and therefore, there is room for 7 more people," Varinus stated. From there they visited an employment agency, and arranged to interview strong men who wanted to work hard for at least a month. "Come tomorrow afternoon, gentlemen. I will call the applicants to be here at 16 o'clock," said the manager. The 3 directors agreed, and they went to a Chinese food place near the end of de Julio Street, because going there the food was tasty and abundant. 8. Good. Everything is moving forward. And I hope you don't get upset about the trip. "I wouldn't like to go to Iraq alone," said Fagocito Gutierrez. "I said I was going, and I will go." And as Franz Cabarobius replied, receiving his plate of meat and rice by fan, "I'm wondering the same." Kurt Wheel added. After the good Chinese lunch, where there is never bread or wine, they passed by a scaperia and drank some javas of that courage-giving nectar, and agreed to pack now, and bring measuring instruments typical of architects and metallurgists, in order to use in prospecting. The next day, their minds now clear, they organized their suitcases, watered the plants, said goodbye to their relatives, and only one of them had any romantic involvement, Fagocito Gutierrez, and he was the only one who walked around for hours with a long face, after hearing the complaints. Feminine. In the afternoon they chose the 7 people, among 9 who showed up for the interview, and took them to the warehouse of electronic technician Don Varinus, who did not open the gate. 10. It shouldn't be. But, it doesn't matter. Come here in 2 more days. I made cards so you don't get lost. Bring work clothes, shoes, if you have them. From here we are going to a hot place, so don't bring thick clothes," asked Franz Cabarobius. One of them raised his hand, to say, "Are we going to go to the desert?" "Something like that." "Why the question?" Franz asked. The speaker had a weathered face, and he said, "I am Juan Gomez, and I was a Prequinero miner. At night it gets incredibly cold. I think you should wear thick clothes." There was nothing to add to this, and the point went to Juan Gomez. The next day Franz Cabarobius knocked on that gate, and after looking through the surveillance system, Varinus opened the gate slightly, saying, "You came yesterday with a group of people." "What, they want to give me a heart attack?" And he looked grimly. "We came with the people who will go with us, so that we could get to know them." And as Franz warned, "Come in," said the sour electronics technician, opening his metal gate a little more. 10. Thank you. Some things are coming, gentlemen. I think we could put them in that corner over there," Franz commented. "Wherever you want. My machine can carry up to 1,000 kilos," said Varinus. This surprised Franz, since the limit of people was 10. "And how is there only room for 10 passengers?" "Without load it could fit 10 or 14 more people," Franz said. The coach put his arms on his hips and said, "But doesn't anyone think nowadays? Of course, they give them everything chewed and ready to swallow. Don't you understand that living matter requires precise calculations? Carrying 100 grams of kidney is not the same as carrying a board." "Understood," replied Franz, eager for the load to arrive later, to get out of there. Now he realized that Varinus was a toxic person. For his part, the technician ignored him, returning to his work with wiring and boxes that Franz did not identify, although at times he looked towards the visitor, to see that he was not intruding on anything. An hour and 15 minutes later they knocked on the gate, and then Franz saw that it was Fagocito Gutierrez, with a truck, bringing boxes with supplies. "It's my friend Gutierrez. He comes bringing merchandise for the trip. Shall I open the gate for you?" Franz said to the technician, who seemed not to have heard the cans being knocked on the gate. "Oh, no. I am the one who opens and closes here." Excuse me. Board Baroness responded, passing by him. Fagocito entered with 3 carriers and they placed 6 boxes 80 centimeters on each side in that corner. Board did not miss the opportunity to be the boss in that winery, and said, the weight limit is 1,000 kilos, but the cubic volume must be taken into account. I will keep it in mind. Maybe it would have been better to buy the products in bags. Fagocito meditated, and paid those men for the transportation. Let's go. There is nothing more to do here, Franz asked, starting the march. He was bored of staying in that warehouse, which he smelled of electrical cables, mold and metal. Before leaving, Fagocito took a last look at the machine that was supposed to take them to Iraq. It looked like an old bus from the 50s. 12. On the appointed day, Board Baroness opened the gate and briefly greeted his current employers. Good morning. Everything ready now? Asked the electronics technician. That's right, Don Borg. The men bring their bags, but they weigh little. Fagocito warned. Good, good. Settle in. Iraq, you said? Near Baalbek? Baroness mentioned, and watched, as they loaded the dimensional shifter from him. The men and directors settled inside the cabin, which had a double floor on one side and at the beginning seats with seat belts in a row. The technician closed the back door, walked down the corridor between the seat and the belongings and entered his cockpit, not leaving the door open. A buzzing sound was heard and the voice of Board Baroness came through 2 speakers, saying, we are going to leave. Put on your seat belts. You will feel strange physical sensations but don't pay attention to them, it is normal. I'll let you know, when we arrive. Fagocito was pale with fastidious expectation. Franz was sweating and Juillet was gritting his teeth. They knew the tremendous effect of detaching from a Brana, and then re-entering in a different direction. The hired men were calm, because they believed that this vehicle had retractable wheels and that they would roll out of the warehouse towards the street. The sensation was nothing to laugh at. It gave everyone the image of losing the functioning of the body, but even more so, of no longer having a functioning brain. This lasted 5 seconds and then a sensation that the body became dense like stone, and then returned to normal, feeling punctures everywhere, even inside the head. Nobody speaks after this, at least for several minutes, as if checking, if they still had body and mind like before that transit ellipsis point. What a monstrous thing. I have never experienced such a thing. Fagocito warned, running a hand over his face. Franz was wiping the sweat from his face with a handkerchief and Kurt groaned, looking at everything with lost eyes. 14. Board Baroness went from the cabin to the back door, opened it and said, we're here. You can leave. Happy to leave, the farmers left dragging their bags, then returned for the equipment. Among them came the directors of the club, who, upon seeing the surrounding panorama, said, this doesn't seem like Baalbek. Board Baroness, who was making sure that no one was going to damage the exit door, which was metal but at the same time thin, said, this is Iraq, gentlemen. Baalbek is in Lebanon. Oh, and then what do we do? Fagocito asked. Explore and that, while they advanced towards Lebanon. Baroness said. Understood, but it seems like a long walk, said Fagocito, seeing the bushes that grew everywhere. There's a channel here. And a lot of water, said Franz, who had already started walking around. The men went towards the canal, and indeed, it was a stream of water, which seemed deep, 40 meters wide and which, after a short walk, turned and was hidden behind the existing reed bushes. 15. And where is their city? They are leaving us in the open, Juillet alleged to Mr. Baroness. He saw that the last bag was already leaving, carried by an assistant of the directors, and said, to the north. The machine works, as is. It goes towards the indicated point but the appearance is not exact, due to multiple factors. Be content knowing that you have arrived in Iraq from Chile in 40 seconds. They walked, removing the water courses, until night came. They set up tents and looking at the stars, they said they were in the fields of the first human civilization. Meanwhile, it had been hours since Don Bordvarinus had left in his curious artifact. They were found in the marshes, swampy areas, full of insects and lizards. If at first no one complained, soon everyone did. On the third day they discovered a road and managed to take part of the group to the next town. There, Fagacito Gutierrez rented a truck that went to look for the rest of the cargo and people who were still in the marshes. "And how the hell did they get there, if there are no roads?" asked the truck driver. "By helicopter." Fagacito lied. 16. The driver looked at him and did not want to delve into questions, because he realized that his client was hiding something. 2 days later, and on a collective bus, they traveled for hours to Baghdad, where they visited ruins and also public buildings. The resilience of the Iraqi people is incredible. They have had so many invasions from Europe and the United States, and despite the killings, robberies and embezzlements, here they are, trying to have good health, good jobs and tourism. And as commented Fagacito Gutierrez, they visited the ziggurat and there were many tourists and sellers of replicas of the monuments. The hired men asked for their wages and went out at night to have fun in the taverns. Some returned the next day. These are true vacations that we are giving them. And as commented Franz Cabarobius. "And what do you want us to do? Fire them?" Kurt asked, while they were having breakfast in a restaurant. "Find somewhere to dig." "But I think Baalbek is not even in sight." Franz snorted, ironically. 17. And Fagacito had excited them about this trip to the Middle East and it was assumed that he had collected all the information before traveling. Therefore, Fagacito said, "Don't worry, we will leave there tomorrow." To fulfill his promise, which was received by the other two with incredulous glances, Fagacito visited the highly made-up ruins, talking to the guides, asking them where excavations were in progress. Most of them had no other goal than to earn the coins to continue surviving. Disappointed, Fagacito entered a tavern and, sitting in front of the bar, ordered a whiskey. The bartender looked at him and said, "I see you're in trouble, friend. Did you miss your flight?" "No. I came to look for ruins that may exist without much study. But I only find tourists and souvenir sellers." Fagacito replied, "Console yourself, friend. He's not the first one to come up with those ideas. And I predict that like them, you will leave home with the memory of having seen wonderful ruins." Fagacito began to drink and an old man approached him, saying, "For a drink I will give you a secret." "What secret?" "The one boy is looking for." I heard the bartender say something. Yes, ruins. SHH. "Don't speak loudly," the old man worried, putting a finger in front of his lips. Fagacito bought him a drink, under the suspicious gaze of the bartender, who couldn't imagine what they were talking about. "Don't pay attention to this old man, sir. He's just a drunk," the bartender ended up saying. The old man handed a piece of leather to Fagacito and left, leaving the empty glass on the counter. On that leather was a crudely drawn map. It showed the city they were in and showed a path to the northeast of the country. At the end there were 3 mountains and on one of them there was a cross. With that in his pocket, Fagacito left the place, excited by the idea that he now had something to base his search on. "It is between Baghdad and Tehran. There are rice and tobacco plantations. We will go by bus," said Fagacito. Since there was no alternative, the other two directors accepted the motion, rented a bus and the next day left heading northeast. The heat was strong and some took off their shirts and drank water often. At 120 kilometers the 3 mountains indicated on the map could be seen. The bus reached the end of the stone road and the driver told them, "You can get up to here. We will walk." Fagacito commented, but the issue of loading was the problem, since the boxes were heavy and the men were already carrying their bags. After a long distance, they left part of the hidden cargo to return later for them. The chosen mountain was reached at 16 hours, and after going around it, they found barely visible ruins, buried and with some trees growing above them. We will make camp right here. Tell the men to bring the carp here. Fagocito said to Cartwheel, who trotted away. The men set up tents and lit a fire to keep warm, as well as food. I'm worried about the water, Fagocito. We have little and I don't see a stream anywhere. Noticed Cartwheel. I will send 3 men to explore. If they have it, it will be good, and if not, I'm afraid we will have to go to a nearby town to get it. Fagocito responded. And everyone began to dig up the ruins. On the 3rd day they found the entrance to the complex, and upon entering they found broken statuettes but useful to understand what they represented. Some walls had relief engravings. This is a huge treasure for archaeology. You have to take photos and videos, Fagocito commented, and they returned outside, since the air was getting heavy. The next day the air also became dense, which is why Fagocito asked Cartwheel to return to Baghdad and bring an internal combustion engine and an aeration system. It will be difficult to get here with that. We should buy a vehicle or an all-terrain vehicle. Wheel stated. Fagocito put 2 statuettes in his hands without major damage and told him, sell them to an antique dealer. Maybe it will help you buy that vehicle, and if you can't, here are 1,000 credits to rent one. Wheel was